We're back. So, welcome to the 114th episode of the Lowdown podcast, sponsored by Patemps Medical and Wine and Earth, the leading purveyors of the finest wines, amongst other things. Joining me on the podcast today are Haverfordwest County owner and chairman, and of course, Orient fan, Rob Edwards. How are we doing, Rob? Have you recovered from the season so far?
Very well, thank you. Good summer off, unlike last year, which was absolute carnage. Good to take a breath now and regroup. Nice to be back on chatting to you guys as well.
I think you would have been preferred to actually be planning another European journey, though.
90% yes, 10% happy with a break.
And also joining us is the dizzying Dal Halls. Have you recovered from the Starman dinner yet, Dal?
Just about. It was a bit of a late one, but I say it's always a good opportunity to kind of meet the players and like see the human side of them, because we kind of see it as the machines on the pitch, and the human element of that is so refreshing to have, and it's such a good thing to have available to the fans.
Well, it is a special club, and we are obviously led by a very special person. The reason we're out of hibernation is for this podcast today to have a nice end of season catch up with our owner, chairman, all round legend, Super Nigel Travis. How are we doing, Nigel?
We are good. It's bright and early here in Boston. Good to have the Lowdown podcast back in the group of podcasts, which I think is interesting. I was talking to my friends at Plymouth and Wickham yesterday. We probably work with the fan podcast more than most clubs. So it's good to see that you've woken up from your winter abyss.
We'll call it that. It's absolutely great to speak to you again, and you're always very open and honest. So I'm sure we'll expect nothing less, as will the fans listening in. So let's get cracking with the first question. The performance last season, I think for me personally, it exceeded expectations. I think we all kind of like started the season in a position where if 16th to 18th, we'll be quite happy. Did it meet expectations for you?
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. We all set our expectations at the start of the season, and mine were, and most of the board were in the same position, 14th. So to finish 11th, I'm a little bit irritated we weren't 10th, and we're doing this documentary with Wickham and Plymouth, and I was with the guys last night finishing the filming, and Rob came above us on goal difference. So that was a bit irritating, but no, the season was excellent. When you consider the injuries we had, it was a fantastic performance. A lot of good young players came through. I'm really happy about Rich's re-signing the contract and moving south. So I'd say it was excellent.
Tell us a bit more about the documentary, whatever you can tell us about the documentary.
Yeah. Well, as a group of American owners, which really means people who are based here, but we do let Phil Wallace in from Stevenage, who actually lives in Jersey. And it's basically just a WhatsApp group where we all kind of chat about things, and there's a lot of humor. I mean, Phil really got destroyed when he somehow escaped relegation from League Two or 3 years ago. But it's become a little bit of a lobbying group, and there's no doubt it had an effect on the EFL with the new international broadcast deal, because we basically think that the EFL has a huge opportunity, particularly in the US, for marketing more revenue. So we all work together, we get on great, and I think one of the untold stories of football is how well every club gets on with others. I mean, most fans may not know that after every game, the coaches get together for a drink. I mean, and it's fascinating because I've sat through several of these with Richie, and you stand there holding your drink and you listen. Well, we were going to shut down your number 7, but that didn't work because you did this. I mean, it's fabulous, and I think this is what life should be. Go out on the pitch, have a really competitive session, and then have a drink afterwards. And the clubs all get on as well. We help each other. We give each other ideas. And one of the things that came out of this is to do a documentary. Some clubs dropped out because they didn't want the high profile. So in the end, it was Plymouth who I'm pleased to say escaped relegation on the last day of the season, Wycombe and us, and it's going to hopefully come out in the next 2 months. It'll be about 90 minutes, one off. We just got to sell it to someone, but it's been fun. It's supposed to be humorous. It's supposed to be showing the world how football works from an owner perspective, but very tongue-in-cheek.
Just quickly there, in regards to, you're talking about the lobbying powers of, combining with other teams. I know the club made a statement on it, but I just wanted to get your personal views on the FA Cup scrapping of the replays, and that must have been something that came up in that WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're any different from any other club. And I did have a very good discussion with Debbie Hewitt, who kind of shocked me. She's the chair of the FA, by phoning me directly. This is right at the start of it. I mean, I think this was a blindside run by the Premier League to try and put it in. I don't think we've heard the end of it. The FA Cup is, well, let me say something. Too many football fans, and I'm one, live in the past. I'm someone who believes that we should move forward and the game has to keep evolving. But there are certain traditions that work, and the FA Cup works. I mean, why they banned replays in rounds 1 and 2, that has nothing to do with the Premier League. There's been all kinds of statistics showing that we actually play more games at our level than the Premier League clubs. But I've gone on record, because Omar Beckles is the chair of the PFA, I think players overall play too many games. But the FA Cup replay is a major source of what's called football fortune. We've not done very well in it. And Richie knows my feelings that we need a cup run sooner or later. And it can be a game changer. I mean, if you can, as we did, play Arsenal away, I think that game bought in for Leyton Orient way over £1 million. So it's important. So I don't think we've heard the end of it. I think the threat of the regulator comes closer every day, I'm pleased to say. I think the Premier League on the regulator put out a pretty poor PR campaign that was laughable. And some clubs close to us joined in it. I think you only have to look at the English team, look at the Premier League. Most of the players came through the EFL in one form or another. We need to get redistribution sorted out. The replay thing needs to be rethought. And I like the idea that perhaps you don't have replays, but you get to the third round, you have a pot of Premier League clubs and perhaps big championship clubs, then a pot of other clubs, and then the smaller club can choose whether they play home or away. So in that example, if we're in the pot of smaller clubs and we get drawn away to Manchester City, we can either play them at home or away. So that was an idea that was put out by Kieran Maguire, who's on the Price of Football podcast. And I think it's a great idea.
Nigel, just going back to obviously to last season. Obviously, you said there you had yourself and the board had a kind of target of 14th around that mid-table position. Obviously, fans are dreamers, none more so than Orient fans. I think it's the hope that kills us. Coming into sort of the last 10, 12 games of the season, we were flirting with a bit of a playoff run then, and obviously expectation grows. And I think there was one or two disappointed fans that we didn't get to those levels. But obviously, keeping it realistic, it was a very good season. But how difficult was it for yourself, the board, and the coaching team to not kind of sort of put one eye towards that playoffs and get excited yourselves, or were you quite grounded in where you obviously where you set the targets at the start of the season?
I'd describe it as balanced. I mean, I told Richie go for it, and at this, when you get to like March, there's not much you can do apart from perhaps tweak the style of play. I mean, we were constantly hampered by injuries. And Richie said, I think we ended up 12 points away from the playoffs. Imagine if we'd had Graham, Happy, I can't go through all the injured players, but a lot. If we'd had, half of them back, we could have made it. So we encouraged him to go for it. I think we learned a lot about certain people, because at the end of the day, football is a people business, and sometimes people perform, some overperform, and some underperform. We learned a lot about a lot of individuals, and I won't go into individual players, but we weren't frightened of going for it, is the essence of the answer to your question.
No, that's good to hear. And obviously, you mentioned Richie. I think we can't really finish an interview without obviously mentioning the great man, and obviously a 3-year contract. Obviously, quite a big commitment for this level of football, a 3-year deal. And obviously, the rumor mill was going round and round or so the week before, and I think at one point he was 5-1 on to be the next Barnsley manager, but it was never in doubt, was it? And obviously, what's your plan now with regards to him and contact with him over the summer to plan for next season?
Well, Richie is terrific. We're very pleased with him. I'd like to take away a couple of red cards, and he knows that. But he's done so much for the club, and people should understand that he's kind of committed to move south with his family. I worried about him going up and down the M1. I mean, recognize I'm someone who hates driving, so I couldn't understand why he managed to do it. I think he actually found it helpful because it gave him time to unwind, to think about things. But I was always concerned about the amount of driving he does. And football managers do a lot of driving because they go and see games, and Richie works very hard at it. We were obviously impressed with the way he managed his people. He doesn't seem to have any favourites. It doesn't matter how big a name you are, you'll get dropped if it's relevant. So we talked to Richie. He came up with some ideas. We dealt with his agent, who's, by the way, a good guy, and we got it done. I think I think we have to recognise at some stage down the road, Richie, hopefully, because it means we're successful, will want to move on to somewhere bigger and greater. But I think he feels we're stable. I personally have a fantastic relationship with him. And I put that down to Martin Ling, who encouraged me when Richie came to the club to talk to him after every game. And I said, hold on, I don't do things like that. And he said, no, you need to. So I do it like 3 hours after every game. And we start talking about the game and usually end up talking about the price of coffee in a motorway service station. But Richard, we got this retreat next week, which, just to be open about that, there's no real agenda, but we're going to my place down the Cape here, and we're going to hang out for 4 days, and we're going to see the Revolution, New England Revolution, one night against the Philadelphia Union. Everyone's hoping that the Boston Bruins is a game 6, so they can see that. But we'll talk about stuff, we'll talk about players, we'll talk about commercial, we can make sure everyone's on the same page about investment, and we'll just hang out. And there's Steve Tate, Mark Devlin, Martin Ling, Richie, Kent's coming, Rich Emmett's coming, and it's kind of a team building, because, and I've talked about this in speeches actually, I'm basically in the retail fast food world. That moves 500 miles an hour, but football's even faster, because you got the emotional drain of, you lose on a Saturday, oh my God, I got Tuesday. So you occasionally need time to stand back from it. And that's what this meeting is. So, we're very happy Richie's signed, and we'll get on and talk about next season. I could go on a lot, but hopefully that answers the question.
I'm going to jump on that, Nigel, because obviously what Rob said about the 3-year contract for Richie, which is great, because I don't really think there's an Orient fan that's not happy about that. I think we're all very, very happy about that. But we've taken on some youngsters recently who have worked out very well, and I've just used Ollie O'Neill and Ethan Galbraith as an example, but obviously our own academy projects as well. Are we looking at extending the contract lengths with the players that potentially to protect us? You know, because we're obviously taking these academy products from other clubs because they've been released, but there's the element that we could also lose them for free. So, are we looking at tying people like Ethan Galbraith and Ollie O'Neill down to longer contracts already?
The answer is yes, but I won't go into the detail. So what I will say, the Ollie O'Neill deal is kind of a template for the future, because he came in. You know, I'll be honest. We've got a very generous sell-on with Fulham. It's a win-win. I mean, we get a great player. He can demonstrate what he can do, and if Ollie goes on to bigger and greater things, we basically split the revenue with Fulham. I mean, that's a good model. And another one that's out there that people talk about is Hector Cipriano, who's clearly done very well at Peterborough. If he gets sold at any stage, we benefit from him. So the sell-on concept, I think, is a wonderful thing in football, and it helps clubs like us get good players, develop them, and benefit from it.
One of the things that will definitely be coming up, I'm sure, at the retreat is in regards to next year's budget. Obviously, the next year there are some big teams coming down. I know that's the same every year, but it does feel like it's a really, busy league with your Birmingham City coming down, for example. Where do you see the budget fitting in regards to the finish for next year?
Well, the first thing I would say is, the budget is very important, and we're very open internally with that, and it will go up over 10% this coming year. So I will say that without giving precise numbers. So I think when you consider that inflation in the UK, what's it now, 3-4%? Something like that. I lose track. So that's good. I think we have to make the best use of it we can. And one of the reasons we wanted Richie to stay is you have to invest in the coaching staff to maximize that. But there will be clubs with very high budgets. I mean, certain clubs went up last year, not this season, with budgets of 11 to 13 million, which is way above what we could afford. But then if you look at the size of their stadiums, they've got the revenue sources that we don't. So I'd say we're going to be somewhere in the middle of the pack. I get complaints by some of my other American owners that we spend too much on players. So I think we're in the middle of the pack. We're not up the top. And again, I know I've been criticized for going on about revenue. The more revenue we get under the new proposed cost rules, the more headroom we have for spending on players. So when I go on about people not turning up and they should use the ticket exchange, all that contributes to more revenue. And the way forward with the new cost things is what's called the squad cost ratio. And right at the heart of that is your revenue number. So, I mean, you're right. I think Wrexham will have a big budget next year. Stockport will have a very big budget. Mansfield, I would guess, to be smaller. And then, sorry about that. Birmingham will obviously be big. So Tom Brady's been heavily roasted for being relegated in his first year. Rotherham will probably be a bit bigger. And then Huddersfield, I think, will be bigger again. So you're right, it's tough. And that's why we're so focused on getting this stadium. But realistically, we're not going to have a new stadium for 10 years. So in many ways, you could argue we've gone up so quickly, we've caused ourselves a problem. But you have to deal with the cards you have.
So just jumping on that, in regards to when you first kind of took over, there was the 3-year plan for each promotion. Obviously, explaining what you just explained there, would that still be your aim for not next year, the year after? Is that what that would work out as?
Yeah, we never actually said 3 years for each promotion. We said we want to get back to where we were in 6 years. So we were lucky the National League, by the way, we were lucky to get out the National League when we did, because it's got tougher in my view. So I think I would think the general principle's true, but the higher up you go is more difficult. So we do intend to get into the championship, but the budgets in the championship are ridiculous. I mean, if you looked at all the numbers, and I think a lot of them been documented, it's just craziness. And the average club in the championship last year lost 20 million. I mean, you see our accounts, we lose 2-3 million, but 20 million is a big number.
Yeah, it's obviously a massive step up. But obviously you're talking about the kind of commerciality of the club. How conscious and how difficult is it for you to find that balance between, obviously it's a commercial business, increasing player budgets, as you said, by 10%, the cost of football is increasing, but then weighing that up against kind of the fan accessibility and ensuring that we're kind of not pricing people out of match days and merchandise. So I guess obviously it's a big part of what you do, but I guess sort of how conscious are you of that in terms of obviously us progressing up the Football League?
Well, the first thing is I have to forget the price of things here. I mean, you can't go and see anything in Boston realistically below $200. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when we bought the club, we said we wanted a younger fan base. So totally unscientific. If you watch all the pictures after every game, our fan base has definitely got younger. And our research shows a lot of it's come from Premier League teams, because a lot of people feel that the environment at Leyton Orient, and I'll say it myself, I think our fan engagement's very good. I think we're improving the stadium, but I know from my own family, and the season we went up last year, my son, who's then 18, had 7 different kids come from America, and they all said it was the best experience of any sporting thing they've been to. So the basic product, and fine, we can always improve, is good. The pricing is very difficult because the UK pricing is very far removed from US pricing. We try not to take advantage of the fact we sell out just about every game. We are going to have more capacity, we hope, this year, because we're spending $500,000 on the East Stand to try and open up the concourses, get more space. So it helps the safety part of it. So that should offer us another 500 fans. But at the same time, we've got all these homes coming in. So it's a constant balance, and we try and recognize that we want to invest in the squad. We got a small stadium, but we don't want to price out fans. So it is a constant juggling act. And already this morning, I've had a discussion on the subject. So it's an everyday thing, balancing it.
I know we're conscious of time, and I know you've got to be on another meeting soon. So we've got plenty of questions. So we'll just ask one. Unfortunately, it's one I want to ask about Coley Parry. Yeah. Obviously, the Common Group have been in the news recently, and I just want you, from an Orient perspective, to give us how involved is he still in the club, and is it affecting us in any way?
Okay, so yeah, I've read all the stuff. It's complicated. I'm the first one to say I don't really understand the Dutch system, but I understand their licensing system. I don't understand the Belgium system, but what I want everyone to understand is that Coley's money went into the club. He's got several partners. They're very actively, and some of them are very actively involved in Leyton Orient. Coley remains very enthusiastic and involved with Leyton Orient. His issues in Holland and Belgium, really nothing to do with us. The money is in the club, and we have no concerns from a Leyton Orient perspective about what's happening. And, you know, we wish him luck sorting out the problems, but they sound significant. But it has nothing to do with Leyton Orient, and no Leyton Orient fan need to be worried about it.
That's good to know. So just a little New England Patriots question for me. I know that you obviously got professional and personal relationship with Bob Kraft. So are you gonna invite the GOAT to E10 for the Birmingham game next year?
Well, that's fair. Okay, the first thing you need to understand, going back to Rob's question about pricing, the number of people who've said to me, can we come and see Leyton Orient versus Wrexham? I could have probably personally sold out the stadium. I can't play golf without someone asking me it. So we're going to charge that game at 2,000 a seat, and that will make up our deficit. We won't have any Leyton Orient fans there. No, joking aside, it's an interesting idea. And I hate the fact that you guys talk about the Patriots when I'm a Dolphins fanatic.
Well, we're bottom of the league now. There's no way we're going to be top of the conference. You're all good there, Nigel.
Yeah, well, by the way, Bob's a great guy. I mean, he's a good friend, and so's Jonathan. So yeah, it's not a bad idea. And Tom Brady, who I've met a few times at Patriot functions, because just for the record, my wife and I do support the Patriots Foundation, and you get to meet everyone. So I think it's a good idea. We will invite him. And Tom Brady, based on talking to him, seems a really nice guy. I just hope I can invite Tua one day as well.
Well, maybe you can invest in the O's. Nigel, I know you've got to get off, so thank you very much for joining us. I think Rob will at one point want to talk to you about maybe getting an Orient friendly down at Haverfordwest in Pembrokeshire, because I know that would be a nice melding of worlds, wouldn't it, Rob?
Okay, so can I just talk about that, Rob? Because
Yeah, sure.
guess where my first day working was? Haverfordwest.
I mean, you'd be struggling to find a business there these days. It's a challenging time down there. What was that all about?
Well, so I got this. This is really quite a funny story. So I started working officially in 1972. I know that seems like 2 centuries ago, and I was going to work for Kraft, as we say in the UK, and you know, cheese and all that. And we had a milk plant down there. So I went. I said, okay. They said, will you please report to Paddington Station for the 12:50 train to Haverfordwest? So I turned up for my first day of work, had to go on the train. It stopped every few miles to pick up milk churns. It shows how long ago it was. And I hardly slept all night because it was my first day of work. And I remember doing a study on that plant later. I think half the people were called Jones, and the other half were called Evans. So I remember Haverfordwest very well.
Nothing's changed. There's Jones and Evans is everywhere, and look, you're always welcome back, and we'll treat you to a night in the Farmer's Arms with the jukebox playing. You'd be red carpet rolled out for you, Nigel.
Okay, hey guys, can I just say welcome back? All the work the podcast doesn't go unrecognized by our board, so thank you. Thanks for all the support to all the fans this year. Have a good summer, and up the O's.
Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you, Nigel. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, see ya.